Twitter in 2008, and I had started using it a bit. At that time, I was at Stanford in the Silicon Valley, so people were starting to talk about Twitter, especially in that space. So I signed up for it. I wasn't using it much, and then I went to an event at the Google headquarters in Mountain View, California, called Barcamp Africa, and that's where I really saw the power of Twitter. So we were using it at the event to really document what was happening at the event, right? So even though it was an event that a lot of people there were experiencing, Twitter really allowed it to come to life for those who were not there, people who we had invited who couldn't come, etc., etc. So just the idea of, and even being able to even identify other people at the event, because this was an event of maybe 150, 200 people. If people were saying very interesting things on Twitter that really resonated with me, I wanted to be able to go and find them later. And I wouldn't be able to find them unless they got up to say something at the event. So I think just the idea of being able to bring thoughts together, being able to amplify things that people were doing was very powerful for me. And since then, I've become a huge fan of Twitter. I think from about then, I stopped using Facebook as much, and I use Twitter more than I use Facebook now. So yeah, I think that was great. And just, I mean, since then, maybe just to add, I've always been very Pan-African, especially when I was in the US. Since I came back to Ghana, I've been more pro-Ghanaian than Pan-African, but that's another story for another day. So Twitter also allowed me to be able to find people who were like me around the continent, based on like different events and things like that. So the people that I made, I had really good relationships and partnerships and friendships with, who were living in places like Angola, Tanzania, Ethiopia, that I hadn't met before. Now I've met them because I've been able to go to those countries these days, but I was able to really resonate with them on Twitter before. Yes.
Excellent. So April, if you realized in my introduction I kept referring to you as this person, that's because unlike the 4 other guests here who are based here mostly, your work has been worldwide. And the thing about people who
local news anymore, and even those network channels, I now find them on Twitter before I find them on my television, because the news there is accurate and more faster than anything that they put up on the actual TV. It's also a galvanizing mechanism. What I did with Oscar So White, what a lot of activists do with the Black Lives Matter movement and so many other hashtags, is bring people together from around the country and around the world to talk about specific issues that are of concern to them. Sometimes it's good news, and sometimes it's less than good news. So I'm happy to use Twitter as my form of communication with the world. My closest friends now are people that I have met in the last 5 years on social media, and some of them I still literally haven't met physically face to face, but we talk offline all the time because of the relationship that was started. And Twitter, it really is, and social media generally, but specifically Twitter for me, is the land of opportunity. I mean, I'm literally sitting here now because of a social media platform, and that should not be minimized, I think, because the power, if you use your platform effectively, the power of Twitter can literally take you around the world.
Literally, and that's why she's here. It's brought her halfway across the world. So I'm making a couple of notes, and I trust I've seen many of you jotting down on your notepads, your digital notepads as well. Ato and April have both spoken about the power of Twitter for documentation, finding similar people, networking / and news and information, and also being the land of opportunity. Nanaba, what does Twitter mean for you?
An avenue to continue to make trouble. Anyway, on a serious note, I mean, Twitter for me is a God-sent tool to connect with a lot of people. It's given me an opportunity to engage with people who hitherto wouldn't have found an opportunity to ask me questions about the work that I do. So a lot of the time I'll do a story and people feel that either the story is deficient with some information, or they didn't understand some information. So they'll come and ask me questions on Twitter, and I like to respond to everyone on Twitter. I make time for everyone on Twitter. Sometimes people ask me if I ever make time for myself. I actually dedicate 2 hours of my day to Twitter. So I respond to everyone who has sent me a tweet. And I have made, like April said, I've made some very fantastic friends on Twitter. In the last 3 years, my best friends are people I met on Twitter. And it's fantastic. And I do a lot of television work, but I don't like watching TV. I don't remember the last time I switched on my TV. Preach, yes. I'm not a TV fan, so I go on Twitter a lot to read. I usually want to understand what people think about a certain policy, and not necessarily the propaganda from the politicians who are formulating these policies. So it's a way for me to gauge the mood and also have fun. I enjoy being silly on Twitter. So I go there and sometimes people wonder why I respond in a certain way. It's a way of de-stressing. Yeah, so that's what Twitter means to me.
Okay, so we've had the first three, so Stephen.
All right, good evening everyone.
Good evening.
So Twitter was actually the last platform, social media platform, that I personally joined. Many years ago when Facebook first came out and Facebook was the craze, I told a friend of mine, I said, this thing will pass. Because of Hi5. How many of you remember Hi5?
Yeah.
You know, so Hi5 came and it died before I ever even joined it. You know, it died before I ever even heard about it. So I was very social media agnostic. You know, very skeptical about Facebook, you know. And I remember many years ago when I was doing my national service, one of my bosses told me about LinkedIn. And I told him, you know, all these social media platforms, they will die before their time, you know. And he said something to me that really struck me and has stuck with me throughout the years. He said, if you're not on LinkedIn, you're not ready for 21st century networking. You know, and I'm glad that he said that to me, because the last 2 jobs I've had, I got through LinkedIn. The present job I have, I got through LinkedIn. You know, so every single person that I knew was getting onto Facebook. And I was very skeptical. Even though I had signed up for a LinkedIn account, I was still very skeptical about Facebook. So time and time, and then eventually I got onto Facebook. The last platform I got onto was Twitter. And you know, having gone through that phase of LinkedIn, Facebook, and then you end up on Twitter, and then you find that you only have 140 characters to tweet, you go like, what am I supposed to say? You know? And I think that's where most brands find themselves. Having gone through social media adoption in a very systematic way of going through maybe Facebook, some brands exploring LinkedIn, and then they get onto Twitter and it's like 140 characters. I have so much to say, you know. And I think it's also because most marketers have been born and grown up in an era of push marketing, where it's all about what I have to say, you know. And I think that when you get onto Twitter, you quickly realize that it's really less about what you have to say and more about how you can participate in conversations that are going on. And most brands are not used to that. They're used to shouting a lot. They're used to saying, look at me, this is what I have, this is what I have to sell. You know, and they come from that, from even Facebook with that mentality, because the difference is, on Facebook, you're not really following people. You understand? On Facebook, you have fans, you have followers, but then you get onto Twitter and it's not about just having fans or followers, but you're also following other people and they're sharing content and you need to engage with that. So if you're going to spend all that time talking about yourself and talking to yourself, nobody's going to mind you. And then you're going to very quickly feel like Twitter is not delivering ROI. So it was the last platform I got introduced to.
Return on investment.
Yes, exactly.
Please slow down the jargon for us.
So it was the last platform I got into, but I think that I've quickly began to realize the power of Twitter and how it enables brands to have really direct one-on-one conversations with people, and I'm sure we'll discuss that more later.
Right, so Benjamin, creative custodian. I promised that I was going to let you explain what that means. I know about a lawyer, you know, I know about, Ato is a consultant these days. I know about a broadcaster, that's Nanaba. I know about a digital marketing manager. I don't know about creative custodian. What do you do?
Okay, so you're sitting across the regional marketing manager for PZ, Africa. Premier, they have like 7 brands. And Premier Cool is like worth about £40 million.
Like
the value of the market, of the brand.
Is it Premier Cool, the soap?
They have different variants.
Right.
And he's like, this is my brand. And I'm putting it in your hands. And I need you to craft a campaign that will make it something that everybody will want to use. Okay. And it's in that same context that the different brand owners, for example, Nescafe or that's the same kind of trust they put in your hands. Because traditionally, I'm a creative director, now available after that. And when you're a creative director, you basically have the final say on what is good to go and what isn't good to go.
Sure.
So whether a campaign does well or not depends on your approval or disapproval. It's a big responsibility. But I would like to touch on, what Twitter means to me. Because my journey to this position started from social media. I just love to blog. And then the account director of an advertising agency was a fan of the blog. And blogs come with social media handles, so by default I had to be on Twitter as well.
Yeah.
So when I click publish, it automatically sends to Twitter, and then there are readers and everything. And one day he hits me up, was like, so Results Advertising, we have a position for a writer, are you interested? And 7 years later, this is where I am. So it's been a very instrumental part of my journey. And even right now, Twitter matters to all the brands that we handle as an agency. So it's critical.
The thing about everybody on this panel is that they are not just looking at the organic side of doing business, but they can speak to, sometimes pushing the market to react the way you want, aka the business side of things. And as young people who are coming, for most of us, social media and Twitter, because we are discussing this, is something we do in the beginning for fun. But then we quickly realize that there's potential because either people follow us and we can leverage that into something when we get into proper jobs, or social media and Twitter becomes our proper job. So the scope of this discussion is going to touch on those areas. Some of the do's and don'ts that practically they can tell us about, and also how to make the best out of Twitter as a medium. So anytime you have a question, just holler and we'll put it to them and we keep it as interactive as possible. So the introduction's out of the way. Now I've noted several things. I spoke about documentation, finding similar people, networking, using it as a source of news and information, and using it broadly. Like you said, it was an opportunity to get into the job market. It came to you, you didn't go to it. Nanaba says she uses it for trouble, but I've put the trouble beside it, good in brackets. So good trouble or bad trouble. It's also, we've seen how ephemeral it can be. It can be fleeting, but increasingly, all the social networks have ways in which you can keep stuff. So that is where it differs from something like radio. That radio, you hear and it's gone. You can't necessarily capture and keep it. But your timeline, you may follow 100,000 people, but curate whatever you've heard for later use. So let's keep those in mind. So general question that I'll put across the table is that today, I woke up around 1 p.m. while getting ready to come here. I jumped onto Facebook actually, and I noticed that a very popular Facebook guy had put screenshots of what he had seen on Twitter, and he had brought it to Facebook. And essentially, he was talking about the trolling Mr. Easy is having. I want to ask, because I don't know, how long has the trolling been going on? Does it start today? No, 3 days. Okay, so I saw it today. And so I heard somebody saying, what trolling? So Mr. Easy, as we all know, is part Ghanaian, part Nigerian. I don't know what ratio it is, whether it's 50-50 or 60-40. But I don't know whether he likes to claim, what? He's Nigerian.
He just went to school in Ghana.
Yes, I know that. But in terms of using it to explore his brand, I don't know how he likes to use it. So apparently he had made a comment, and it's not the first time, if I recall, he has made a similar comment saying that Nigerian artists are copying his style of fusing Ghanaian music with Nigerian music. Something like that. And he's been taken completely to the cleaners. Off the top of my head, one of the tweets, and I was telling somebody about it, that one of the tweets said that, you know, somebody should tell Mr. Easy that if we Nigerians leave him to only Ghanaians, he won't go anywhere. The other one said that he thinks too highly of himself, and that even if they took him out of Nigerian music, the industry will still move on. And people reminded him that Ice Prince has become Water Prince these days. The bunch is nowhere to be found. And they gave example upon example about how even the almighty P-Square, you know, when Twitter decided to go after him, they had to come and apologize and all this and all this and all that. So the first question is to anybody who would like to answer. But let me start with you, April. Should we underestimate the power of Twitter in your experience?
At your peril. Why would you underestimate any social media platform, right? Because we've seen it in practice. As you said, he's been dragged, right, for something that he said. We've seen people gain jobs through social media. We've seen people lose jobs through social media. So it's really imperative that everyone be very mindful of how you're using the platforms. And I think that, you know, we're talking about Twitter today, but the platforms are very distinct. So, for example, if I had a business selling jewelry, Instagram would probably be my primary platform because it's a visual medium, right? I'm not putting the pictures on. But if I want to blog and have a conversation, then that would probably be on Twitter so that I could get my immediate response.
Yeah, sure.
So I think that there's no reason why you would underestimate any social media platform, but especially not Twitter, because things happen so quickly, and if you're not keeping up, you're going to get left behind.
Please tell us your experience with Oscar So White. I mean, you don't underestimate social media. First of all, did you think that Oscar So White, the hashtag, will become what it was? And if that's not the case, how did it grow? What's the story behind it?
Sure. I created Oscar So White in January of 2015, primarily because I was disappointed in the lack of nominees of color and of other traditionally underrepresented communities that were being nominated for Oscars or Academy Awards that year. And I tweeted one time. The tweet was, "Oscar So White, they asked to touch my hair," which is a very sensitive thing, you know, in the Black American community, because very often there are white people, especially white women, who want to touch your hair. Oh my goodness, the texture, and how do you get it to stay, and all. Yeah, right. So it was a joke. It was sarcasm, and that was it. I tweeted that one time before work. I went to work. I checked in around lunchtime, and it was trending internationally. In the 5 weeks between the very first tweet in the middle of January and the day of the Oscars, which is at the end of February, in 5 weeks, the hashtag Oscar So White had been used over 600,000 times. 600,000. And that wasn't me. I mean, that was people around the world. Yeah. So, you know, I don't think that there is any way that you can predict whether your hashtag is going to be viral. And so you have to be very smart about what you say, because as they say, you know, the internet is forever. Yeah. So you can put something out there that may be insensitive or homophobic or racist or whatever, and then think twice about it and then delete it, but it's still there, right? Somebody's going to find it and bring it up at the most inopportune time. So be very mindful, be very intentional with what you're doing on social media, because it will stay with you forever. Okay,
Benjamin, please, you and Stephen, she's spoken about how, as it were, organic, or you did it and it was just a joke. It wasn't a deliberate effort, but for your business purposes, you guys focus on doing deliberate things. I want to mix it up. So think about how, for example, Oscar So White, how would you, as brands, how would you have made it a deliberate effort for it to trend, to influence people and reach a certain goal? I'll punctuate it with a personal story of my own. I joined Twitter somewhere 2009, I think. 2010 World Cup, I was doing television for Metro TV. So I didn't have time to do a lot of tweeting. Now, I knew the power of Twitter at the time, but because I was doing TV, I couldn't multitask as I can now. I wasn't too good at it. But I was using it as a place to de-stress. And then in 2011, December, I started taking it seriously because I started tweeting about African football, and then I got my first international gig of Twitter, some TV station in England. This was at the time Ghana was going to play England, you remember? Yeah. In the UK. And ITV contacted me and said, we see you tweeting a lot about African football. Can you do a blog about, you know, what we should expect to our English audience from the Ghanaian team, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities for the English team, and so on? I said, fine. That's when I started taking it seriously. What I forgot, or I didn't forget, but I didn't take it seriously until last year. And I'm talking between 2009 and 2016. Check this out. So I'm there during the Olympics last year. And I'm tweeting about the Olympics and about the Ghanaians who are taking part in the Olympics. And some guy comes into my mentions, takes one of my pictures I have tweeted. Now, when I tweeted the picture, I took it as a screen grab of my laptop. So I had the tabs. I think I had 4 tabs open or so. But when he tweeted at me, he said, are you watching what I think you are watching? So I didn't get it. So I zoomed into the picture. I looked at it. And I said, what am I? Because he had sent me the exact same thing. I looked at it for the 3rd time and I realized that the 4 tabs that I had opened, within the 5 minutes that he had sent me the whatever back, he had photoshopped another tab there, and it was of a porn website. My immediate reaction was anger. Big mistake. So I tweeted the guy and I said, what is that? He had come and have fun and troll me. So basically he took me on and we bantered for 2016 for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So I called him out and I said, what kind of silly thing? That was the first mistake. The second mistake was I wanted to take him to the cleaners. I thought I had 100,000 followers or whatever it was. So this guy, I'm going to show him. All right. So then I said to all my followers, this is what this guy has done. So I wrote a 10-point, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. Then somebody came into my DM and said, this guy you are going to stop. He's a troublemaker. Go onto his timeline, check him out. But by that time, everything was gone. Within 30 minutes, apparently this guy has an army. You know, I'm sure you know what kind of people I'm talking about. This guy, let me come forward to emphasize my plight. No, don't joke with this thing. So this guy comes and goes to take my tweet from when Twitter was just a joke for me. In 2009, 10, 11, when I was tweeting very silly things, I made homophobic jokes at the time. And he and his guys, I think there were about 50 guys, they kept on going at me for about 30 minutes. Imagine. So, and in one of the guy enters my DM and says, yeah, effing with the wrong guy. You are this global brand now, you work with BBC, CNN. If we tag one of them right now, we are finished. At that point, I took it seriously. Because I've spent the better part of 10 years cultivating this thing. Within 30 minutes, this guy was come to destroy. So I hit panic mode. I checked, I asked around, and he wasn't using his real name. His name is Questmatic. I'm sure you guys know him. People know Questmatic, right?
Yes, that's the guy you're talking about.
Yeah. So I didn't know, but I got to know later that is what he does for fun. He comes to Twitter to distress, comes to find people who use Twitter legitimately for our daily jobs and stuff, and just tries to annoy you. So basically, I was able to find people who knew him, mutual friends. We spoke with him. It turned out that he was in Canada at the time. 2 days later, 2 whole days in Twitter is not a joke. They had done memes. They had found pictures of me on Google, put monkeys on my face, Sesame Street, Elmo, you know, the whole 9 yards. Like, they took me through the rigmarole, the treatment. And the one thing they didn't do that I'm thankful for is that they didn't tag any of my international employers. But afterwards, we spoke about it. We came on Skype with this mutual friend that I know. And I said, Charlie, why do you do this? And he said, look, he said he's an architect or something by... And for him, Twitter is nothing. It's not, that's not where he works. So when he's had a stressful day like Nanaba, that is where he comes and just comes to distress. And he has a whole army of people like that, and they'll just come and mess with you. So that's my power of Twitter negative experience movement. It nearly destroyed my career, and I would have been done. Because the thing is, just like Benjamin, just like Ato, I got my first real international gigs from Twitter. And the way it works is when one of those international organizations uses you once, the rest are going to keep coming. And it's been coming and it's been coming. So, after that commercial break, let me come to you. So, that was not a deliberate effort from April. How do we use Twitter deliberately to make money? Quickly, you, Benjamin.
Okay, so I've had the benefit of listening to you yesterday, April. So I'm also very aware of how organic it was. From an agency perspective, by the time you are pitching to the client, you should have listened to enough conversations on Twitter to know which people are passionate about racism, for example. Which people are, continuously talking about it. Because you can track conversations, you can even do it per geographic area. So in this 5 kilometers around here, how many people are mention things regarding black or white or race or Oscar in your conversations, and then start noting them and prioritizing them in terms of their audience. So when you do that and you come up with whatever hashtag it is that you want to use, they become the celeb community that you want to try with and see, the response to this kind of a thing. And you should have a prior conversation, with them. Last year we did Pass the Mug, which was International Coffee Day, and Nescafe wanted the world to share a mug of coffee. So we identified people in the different West African countries who fall within the kind of thing we're looking at. We send them presents, because when you're a brand and you want people to work with you, you have to go with presents, and you have to court them like you're courting a woman, and make them happy, just give them all the vibes. And then, but even that, you should have something with the potential, something that is relevant to people. Yeah. Because the most influential people cannot make the most irrelevant thing a big deal. People have to be excited about it. I think that's why Oscar So White was a big deal, because it's a very big tension. But from an agency perspective, you're more calculated, which people can advance the course of your conversation. How can you use them? You are even meticulous. Can you start this conversation on Monday? Can you join on Wednesday? Can you act like you didn't know about it and you're surprised? And hopefully it picks up and becomes something big.
Okay, so we'll go into the nuances of that in a bit. But Ato, tell us, hashtagging is a big part of Twitter. We know that hashtags are used to curate, to be able to monitor conversations and so on. How do you choose a hashtag?
Okay, so let me pick something new. That a hashtag that I created sometime, I think maybe this year. It was about jollof. So I'm a big fan of Wache.
Preach.
huge big fan of Wache. And I think so I started, actually when I moved back to Ghana in 2011, I used to eat Wache almost every day. And then I was like, I can't keep on eating Wache every day. So I decided to pick Wednesday as the day that no matter what, it's Wache day for me. So we started the hashtag Wache Wednesday, and so I was talking a lot about it, talking to my friends about it, and my friends started using it as well. And the interesting thing was I even started to see brands even use it. Surfline and Co started to use Wache Wednesday as well. So when the jollof was kind of like at this peak, I was like, okay, there has to be a day for jollof as well. And also within Ghana, I think within our membership, we also had a bit of a Wache jollof fight. So every time we'd introduce a new member, we'd say, are you for Wache, are you for jollof? Okay. So we're like, okay, we have Wache Wednesday, what day can we pick for jollof? And I was thinking through it, and just the same way W is Wache and Wednesday, we're like, what day is J, right? There's no day that is J. There's no, Jazz Day or Jan Day. But I was thinking through it, and I was like, Jollof actually comes from Senegal, right? That's where it really started from. So it's like the Senegalese speak French. And JD is Thursday in French. So we created that hashtag Jollof JD to kind of like back Wache Wednesday. So every Thursday we eat Jollof, right? So definitely in creating a hashtag, you have to be creative about it. It has to be something that sparks some kind of interest, right? Like, I think if you're looking at something like Oscar So White, you're like, why is the so there, right? It has to be something that creates conversation. So you don't just create a boring hashtag in a sense, especially if you want it to go viral. Also for different events that we do, we try to have hashtags that are small because Twitter is 140 characters, right? You don't want to create a hashtag that's 20 characters and then you have to only have 120 characters to work with. So you have to be creative in that way, keep it short as well. So that's just an example.
Okay. I'll come to you, Stephen Harry Sawyer. As well. If you just joined us, I can't imagine you just joined us, but if you just did, we are just going through the different strands of the power of Twitter, what makes Twitter tick, some do's and don'ts, and like I said, if you have any questions about any part of the discussion, please just put your hands up so that I can get an idea of what you want to talk about. I'll note it down and then ask in a very orderly format. I'll come to you, Nanaba, in a bit, but let me ask Stephen. He's spoken about choosing hashtag, but for brand purposes, I see a lot of professional people here. What considerations do you take, apart from the normal ones he's put forth, in choosing a hashtag? Because you were having International Coffee Day, but the name of the hashtag was Pass the Mug. So how do you choose hashtags from a business point of view?
Okay. So I think one of the first considerations obviously you have to have is whether or not you want to have a branded hashtag. So you can have a hashtag that actually has your brand name in it, for example, Vodafone Ekikimi, for example. Or you could have a hashtag.
That's long.
It is, for a very unique reason, and I'll tell you after the session. Okay, so you can have a branded hashtag, or you can have a hashtag that's not branded. So that's probably the first thing you think about. And then also you need to think about whether or not the hashtag has been used before. Okay, and there are platforms online that you can do that, And thirdly, you also want to think about whether the hashtag has been associated with any kind of negative trend or negative conversations before you jump on it. All right. So for brands, there are a number of processes we go through, before certain things start. Even for example, for a marketing campaign. Before you actually even say this is the name you want to use for a marketing campaign, there are a lot of internal discussions, even sometimes to the point of even involving the legal team, to be sure that we're not violating any copyright, we're not violating any trademarks, we're compliant, in terms of what can and cannot be done, So those are some of the considerations that I would go through, in choosing a hashtag for a business.
Okay, so Nanaba, let me come to you now. We've seen how you choose hashtags. Is there any recent hashtag you've chosen or that has blown up?
Must be Raising Readers.
Which is where you come in. So for educational purposes, Raising Readers is a very good initiative. There have been a lot of that. I'm sure we are familiar with projects where people do educational stuff. But what makes Raising Readers unique is that it seems to crystallize opinions online and takes it offline. So the aim is to
get children to read.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, the person who spends the bulk of her time correcting people's grammar on Twitter should be the person who will do that. So Raising Readers, you chose that hashtag because...
I chose it because, it's something that I always wanted to do. I joined Twitter in 2013 by accident. It was a joke with a friend who said that, if you join Twitter, you can get about 1,000 followers in 5 minutes. And I said, how about 5,000 followers in 5 minutes? So it was a bet. And in fact, in 5 minutes, I had 6,000 followers. So I won the bet, by the way. But I am very passionate about reading. It's the one thing that I get very disheartened about when I realize that children are not reading and parents and teachers are not encouraging children to read. And what breaks my heart most is the use of shorthand. I can't stand shorthand. I'm just allergic to it. It gives me palpitations. And I do engage educationists a lot. And it is heartbreaking to know that a lot of our children who sit for BECE especially are failing, not because they don't have the answers to questions, it's because they are writing shorthand in exams. So for instance, I saw some exam papers that the chief examiner showed to me, and it was a science paper, and the child had written the chemical, and there was DE, and chemical was CHEM''L. And it was there, yes, a lot of it. But this student had an idea. He knew what he was writing, but he was using shorthand. And it's from the house. The parents are not telling them to stop, because the parents themselves are writing GM for good morning, and for a long time I thought it was general manager. It was just recently somebody told me it was good morning. So I wondered why people were always calling me general manager, GM. I didn't get it. Apparently it was good morning. You know, because the parents are writing it and they're communicating with their children and they're writing shorthand, and the children think it is the way to go by, to live, you know, so they're writing it in exams. And I came up with Raising Readers because I feel that we are letting the children down. We are not making enough noise about the dangers of what we do. We are doing it for fun, but it is hurting a lot of people, especially, I mean, I'm sure a lot of children are looking up to you, a lot of children are looking up to all of you. And so if you communicate with a child and you write DAT for that, and the child is 8 years old, he or she assumes that is how...
When people tell me GM, I say FM.
What's FM?
5 morning.
You know, so that is why I came up with Raising Readers, because the thing about Twitter...
5 morning.
No, but it's
annoying, so it's good.
It's annoying.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Remember, I hit you on WhatsApp and you said 5 morning. I'm like, this one I was living in a compound house. I greet somebody.
That's a good one.
Yeah, 5 morning.
I think I should take it. I will take it. I'll borrow it.
All right.
You know, so I came up with Raising Readers because I realized that a lot of people on Twitter who engage me do a lot of shorthand. Sometimes I feel they're just doing it because it's the in thing. Somebody will say, Anab, I'm looking for a job, or I want to do an internship in your newsroom. I say, send me a mail and add your CV. They send me professional emails and they're writing shorthand. How do you get a job? You know, so that's why I take time to correct people on Twitter. I know it pisses people off, but naturally I like to piss people off. I enjoy it. And so when it pisses them off, I like it. But they don't repeat it.
Sure.
You know, so I feel that I have to take it off. Tough love. I have to take it off Twitter and then take it to the children who are not on Twitter. Because the 6 years and the 8-year-olds, they're not on Twitter. So I take it to communities every Saturday. I read with children in different communities. So the Raising Readers hashtag has worked. That's the name of the NGO. Yeah. And if I had met them earlier, I would have probably come up with a better hashtag.
No, but Raising Readers. So the other thing I'd like you to think about as I go to April is, so what you have in common, you and Atu especially, is you like to have actionable things on social media, but you want to affect behavior offline, right? How have you gone with that, and what lessons have you learned? You have been doing bar camps too. I mean, how many bar camps have you had around Ghana now?
76.
76? Wow. Goodness. And I've always, this is my pet's fear for you, is that one day a politician can study this man and just decide that, you know, Atu probably needs this or this in his life. So Atu, let's sit down. How much do you need for bar camp? You know, and give him money and then it can. Because bar camp is an extremely powerful tool. For those of you who don't know, they go to communities and just try to affect behavior positively. That's basically the way I can, right?
Well, I don't like politicians, so that's not.
Yeah, I mean, knowing you, but politicians like to say this annoying thing, and another because you deal with them, they always like to say that everybody has a price. Yeah, it's something they actually believe in. So you have been able to go to 76 communities in Ghana, and everywhere you go, you get the numbers. And we know politics is about numbers, you know. So they just tag on, and then they just infiltrate, and hopefully it never happens. So you will tell us, you and Anna, about how you are able to take it offline, and also from a business point of view, how do you, take like the Vodafone Ekikime? I mean, how did you get people to love it off social media and be actionable on it? But April, there's something about what you did and something you mentioned in terms of networking. So what was your regular job before you issued that hashtag, that fine morning at work?
I practiced law for 20 years.
What kind?
Campaign finance work, primarily. So there was, so there was no connection between that and, Twitter was my avocation, it was my hobby initially. I decided that what I was doing was not speaking to me creatively and I didn't feel any passion in my job. So I began, again, on Twitter. I had made friends with someone who was running a digital media platform, and he was looking for writers. So initially I just said, I would love to write for you.
Just like you.
Right. I would love to write for you because that'll allow me to utilize more of a creative outlet and do something on the side. And then I became incredibly involved with that and became the managing editor of that platform. And so that's basically where I was when Oscar So White took off.
Could you briefly summarize how Twitter we are talking about the power of Twitter, so networking-wise, how has it helped you, and what are the practical ways in which to increase your network and get networks that will bring, results, whether it's in cash or kind?
It really depends on what you want to get out of it, right? So if I'm just looking for friends or people that are going through the same issue that I'm going through, for example, I'm a parent. So if I'm looking for, I need to talk about something that my son did that was really crazy and figure out if I disciplined him too harshly, then I may talk to people in parenting Twitter. If I am unemployed or underemployed or just don't like my current job and maybe want to do something different, then I'm going to be talking to employment Twitter. And so I'm going to be using the platform much differently between those two ideas. But I think one of the most important things is just being able to find your tribe. That's what I say all the time. Find the people that you relate to that are part of your community. So, like all of us, we all have a lot of followers, but I intentionally keep the people that I follow relatively small. I think it's under 3,000 because I like to have actual, real conversations with those people. And if I was following 100,000 people, there's no way that, my Twitter feed would be moving too quickly, and there'd be no way that I could have a substantial, significant interaction with those folks. So I think that's really important too.
Okay, Ato?
So I think there are a bunch of questions, but I think first for maybe just the politician side, I think definitely there's always like a price to a certain extent, but there's also like even though there might be a price, you still don't want to lose focus, right? So for instance, when we have bar camps, we don't discuss politics at all. It's not welcome. So even if a politician was to engage us to do bar camps, we would say that we would not discuss politics. And, we don't care how much you're paying us, right? So I think even though, you build something to a point with social media, and, people are buying into it, you still want to be able to hold your values, because that's what got you to that point, right? Sure. If you kind of like destroy those values, you won't be able to, you lose a lot of your followers because that's what they're following you for. So you want to be able to keep your values and keep the reasons why people are following you. And then I think that's one of the huge things about Twitter as well, right? I think most people follow people on Twitter because they like what they do. I always use an example that I support Manchester United, and there was one day that I saw a lady who lives in Tema, who she just only tweets Manchester United, and because of that she had like 5,000 followers. And this is like a couple of years ago. I don't remember her name.
UFC girl.
Yeah. So I mean, people really engage with you based on what you're talking about.
Sure.
And if you sway away from that, they will stop, paying a lot of attention to you. So I think similarly we use Twitter to be able to find people who are, I like when you talked about the tribe, to be able to find people who like something in particular, right? So if we are doing something that has to do with Kumasi, we want to find people who are really interested in Kumasi. If you're, and I remember there were a couple of times that we engaged some brands to do Twitter debates and discussions for them. So whether it was about sex or was about something in particular, we want to be able to find the people who like to talk about sex.
Yeah.
And I think that has been touched upon by Benjamin as well. So I think being able to find people who are really interested in what you do and passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah, I hear you on that. But what about networking? Because I don't know a lot of people other than you who have increased their networks and actually used it to do stuff like that.
Okay.
I mean, our demographic here is, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean,
they're seeking upward mobility and
yes.
all that. How do you find people like that who can really use your?
I think the first key thing is being able to search very well. I think sometimes searching is a skill.
Okay.
Being able to find, people who are doing something particular. So maybe just to give an example, if just thinking about, let's say, Cape Coast, right? Like we're going to have Barcamp Cape Coast. We want people who are interested in Cape Coast, right? So if I go all day and I'm looking for people who are based in Cape Coast, it's not that easy to find. So it's a skill that you build, right? So what are the key things that people are talking about in Cape Coast? Maybe people who are in Cape Coast, they don't tweet about Cape Coast, but they tweet about Afashe, or they tweet about Casford Hall, or they tweet about, something in particular, like tweet about Eshon, because Eshon is from Cape Coast, right?
Sure.
So this is something that, you want to be able to build as a skill, to be in your networking as well. So I think for the networking bit, it's just kind of like getting onto things that really matter to you. So if there's a conversation about Youth Connect Africa, or if there's a conversation about WEF, or if there's a particular day, let's say it's, I don't know, some like volunteer day, you're looking for people who also do volunteer things around the world, then you get onto those hashtags, you see what people are saying, you engage them, and then you'll be able to meet people who are like you in different places.
Okay.
So I think, but the more you do it, the more you practice, you get better at it.
Right, so searching is one of them. So far we've talked about the various uses of Twitter in the eyes of our panelists. They went through a 5-minute session where they spoke to what Twitter means to them. And we got about 7 different things that they use Twitter for the documentation, all the way to using it as a CV. And for those of you who have been following Social Media Week Independent Accra, you would have noticed some of the topics have already been delved into in detail, like the using Twitter as a CV and so on and so forth. So these are not new. If you want resources on those topics, just see the organizers, and I'm sure the videos and the go onto their Twitter, use the hashtag SMWI Accra, and you click on the hashtag, all the conversations are there. And the great thing that I was following while at work this morning was most of the stuff are in pointers, so it's like you can read and learn as you go. Right, so from the business side of things, most of us here see a group of people who are gaining prominence, and they call them influencers. In the last session, she used an expression. She said taste influencers, right? Is that what she said? Yeah. Pardon? Yeah, tastemaker, or yeah, something like that. So these are people that brands identify as being tribal, right? Yeah, influential in certain tribes, and then they use them. How do you look for these influencers, and how can we as ordinary people build our profiles to a certain point that we know that if I get to this point, Vodafone is coming for me, or because you work for an agency, you can do that on behalf of a brand. Harry,
okay.
You first.
Okay, so I think, as brands, we're always looking for people whose values align with ours. So we're very, very careful about who we employ, in terms of our social media strategy and things like that. In terms of the process that we go through, in identifying those kinds of people, we look for people who are not just people who have a lot of followers. You understand? And I think that's one of the metrics that many marketers, many brands have been deceived by. You know, your following or the number of fans you have is only significant to a certain point. You know, and there's a funny joke that, you know, I was sharing with a friend of mine from Google yesterday. We were looking at a Facebook page of someone, and he has over 300 fans on Facebook. And we went through his timeline, the timeline of the page, for about the last 3 months. Not a single post had 1 like. Not a single post had 1 like, not to even talk of a comment or a share. He has over 300 fans on Facebook. For the last 3 months, nothing. You know, and we're like, are these fake fans, or, you know, what's going on here? You know, so your following matters to a point, but I think for a brand, you're looking, in terms of influencers, you're looking for people who are able to engage people, you know, in conversations that are relevant to your brand. You're not just looking for someone who has 10,000 or 20,000 fans. You know, you're looking for someone who has a very, very engaged following, and someone whose values, you know, align with yours. Okay. I think also one of the things that we also think about is this someone who has a track record of tweeting or sharing content, all right, that is positive? Because you don't want someone who, for example, for the last month or 2 months has been sharing a certain kind of content. You want to be able to go back in the person's timeline and check to a certain degree if this is someone who has been consistent, and then also be able to even make a projection to say that, you know what, going forward, is this someone who, even if was not directly associated with our brand, is this someone that we would be happy to look back and say that at one point or another, he or she was an influencer for our brand? So I think for anyone here who's looking to be an influencer, I think you should be very, very careful the kind of content you put on social media, number one. Number two, I think that you should have a value system, and that value system should be something that brands out there can look up to and see that, you know what, this is someone that we think we can take advantage of, we can partner with. You know, I think brands typically would go, you know, a lot of times with the musicians, the artists, the celebrities and things like that. But you see, a lot of times, what we're increasingly beginning to realize in business is that consumers are very, very smart. All right, you get maybe a Sarkodie, or you get maybe a Shatta Wale, or you get maybe one of these other artists to put out a tweet, put out a Facebook post. Consumers have a way of knowing that it is not authentic.
Yeah.
All right, so what you actually want to do as a brand is build influencers organically. Influencers who want to become influencers, who want to become brand ambassadors, not necessarily influencers who, you know, you have to engage and say, you know what, I'm doing this campaign, or I'm doing this marketing initiative, can you come on board, can you support me? You want people who believe so much in your brand that they are willing, you know, to tweet about it, to share about it. And the beautiful thing about Twitter is that a lot of the conversations that you have, they are public. All right, so if you succeed as a brand in delighting consumers publicly, it could have a lot of positive, you know, ramifications for your brand. That's I think is really one of the things that we should think about as brands, as people, that it should be more of an organic thing, as opposed to, you know, always going there to say, okay, let's engage who's the biggest celebrity, or who's the biggest music artist. You want to get to a point where the average Joe who has 5,000 or 10,000 or, you know, 20,000 or 300 fans says that, you know what, I am going to tweet about Vodafone's product because I've used it and it is so great. You know, and that's I think is the key thing, you know, brands are looking out for.
Yeah, question.
Okay, hi, my name is Ivy. I wanted to find out, so in the case where we're talking about the power of Twitter, and we're talking about how, I mean, you don't want people or your employers, for example, to, I mean, think that you are going overboard. Is it advisable to have 2 accounts? For instance, I work with a financial institution, and you have to be subtle, you have to be hidden, you don't come out too much. There was a problem and someone tagged me in it, and I had to send the person a message and say, please don't tag me, delete that comment. And so I want to know, is it okay? Okay, I mean, I can keep my professional Twitter account, and then I can maybe a one on the side to do other things without it necessarily coming back to me, like in the case of the guy who was messing you up.
Right. If you couldn't hear her question was simple. Should she have two identities online? A professional one and an alter ego that can be her real self? I have my own answer to that, but yeah, let me hear from my panelists.
Yeah, so I have a friend who he tweets a lot of very, 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 very silly things with one account.
That was 4 berries. Very silly.
He's a bit more than even charismatic in other things.
Yeah.
So he does that a lot with one account, and then he has his official account where he tweets normal things. But I think the interesting thing is that even at the point whereby because you can build a huge following by tweeting silly things, right?
Okay.
But when sometimes people tweet silly things because they want to build a huge following.
Yeah, sure.
So you might get to the point whereby, things become serious. People are trying to engage you to do this, to do this, to do that. Your identity will get known, right? So I think on the flip side, it can come back to bite you, whereby, there are more opportunities for you because of the following that you've built, but because of the things that you've been saying and things like that is very difficult. So I think even though people might want to be silly, you still have to be able to, if you can't back what you're saying later, then you probably should not tweet it.
Okay.
Unless you just want to remain anonymous forever, which is also very difficult to do.
Yeah. The internet never forgets.
Yeah.
Nana, I'll come to you and ask, because we are on this tangent. I don't know if you've ever spoken, but this should be an exclusive for Social Media Week. Tell us what lessons there were from that whole thing, the TV3 incident. I mean, because you are my friend and I know you very well, I know that there was no malice intended, but the fact of the matter is that it happened. It was the reason why you lost the job.
I didn't lose the job, I resigned.
You resigned. I mean, when I say lost a job, you jumped out of a ship that TV3 was under your direction going somewhere. You had to jump out of that ship, not because you planned to, but because of a certain series of events. I'll come to that. Just craft your answer in your head.
Yeah,
but based on
if you allow me to craft it, I will not say the things that I want to say.
Okay.
So let me say it now. Otherwise, okay.
So just recap for the benefit of, we have some people coming from outside.
Okay, let me start this way. We're in 2017 now. So since 2014, since 2014, I think May 2014, I had been threatening to leave TV3 because I was tired. I was doing the same thing for God knows, and I had become so synonymous with TV3. You mentioned TV3, wait, Nanaba, yes. And every time I tried to leave, they would just, show me money.
Big one.
I know.
Yeah.
And then I will, money is good. Money is good, so yeah, I'll stay. And then every time I wanted more money, I would just say, I want to leave, I'm tired. This just happened.
We should try that in our offices.
You should, actually. You should. You should. It works.
But that's only if you're really good.
If you're what?
If you're really good.
If you're valuable.
If you're not good.
But I want to believe everyone is valuable.
Yeah, and I want to assume that everybody here will build themselves to a point where they'll be really good.
You become valuable.
Yeah.
Anyway, so back to the issue. So in 2015, my father had just passed away. And so my father passed away on September 18th, and my son was turning 15 on September 28th. Now, I had planned that, my dad and my son, and I would, spend his birthday, because my father was like my son's father, because the father of my son was never around. So we had planned to spend, his birthday in London. And then he passed away for some reason best known to him.
He decided to go.
He decided to go. So my son and I went to London. And then one Sunday, Manchester United had played on Saturday. Yeah, we won.
Yeah.
So Manchester United had played on Saturday. And Sunday, a very good friend of mine came to see me, at my place in London. And he's a Manchester United fan as well. And so he had gone to the stadium with his friends, and he took pictures with, you know, United players, you know. And I said, oh, let me just go and cause trouble on Twitter, just to troll Arsenal fans because they had lost earlier in the day. And this friend of mine hates Arsenal as well. So we decided to do the joke together. So, you know, he would send me the picture and I'll say, look, this is what I'm tweeting. What do you think? He said, oh, yeah, do it, you know. So I posted all of those pictures, you know. And then I logged out of Twitter. You know, for some reason, I logged out of Twitter. I went back to Twitter and I went, hey, what happened here? It was like a flood in my mention. It wasn't it was a deluge, you know. Hurricane Irma. You know, and I was wondering what's going on here. And so the first thing I saw was TV3 news anchor Nana Aba blah blah blah. And so I called.
Oh, so the news stories had gone out by the time.
No, not the news stories. These were tweets from the individuals.
Yeah.
So I called my friend who had then left my place, and I said, who is, and I don't want to mention the names here. So I said, okay, so let's say Mr. A. So I said, who is Mr. A? And why does Mr. A think that I stole your pictures? Did you tell Mr. A that you gave me the pictures? And he is not on Twitter. So he was like, what the hell are you talking about? What is this about? So I said, okay, come back to my place and check these things out because it's like hell in my mentions. So he came, saw it, and then he called up his friend and he said, look, I gave Nana Aba the pictures. We were joking. It was a joke that we were doing. I mean, then he said, but you should have told me. So when I saw the pictures, I was wondering where she got the pictures from. I'm like, you hadn't posted it. So did I steal your phone and got the pictures? Common sense should tell you that somebody close to you, but it was too late. I mean, the long and short of it, it was a joke. But I enjoyed the days out because I like to, I dish it so I can take it. I like to troll Chelsea and, you know, Arsenal fans. So they dish it and I can take it. I don't really mind trolling. So it was coming and coming and coming. I was actually enjoying the memes. The Nana Aba was in heaven when Jesus Christ. I was enjoying. I was looking at them and I was having a good laugh. I actually had my favorites. Then I came back to Ghana. Then it had become an issue on radio station, your station. And I was wondering, this station hasn't got content. I mean, there are more important things happening in this country. Children under 11 are dying from malaria and they choose to discuss Nana Aba.
I know.
Yeah, what is going on here? So it was a big issue for radio stations, and these radio stations were going on and on and on. And I went to my office and my CEO calls me and said, Nana Aba, what happened? So I explained to him. And then I called my friend who was with me, and then they called a friend who started the storm on Twitter. And he said, look, I didn't know, and I'm ready to apologize, you know, whatever I have to do, because I didn't know this was the issue, you know. But at TV3, I think they also, I don't know, the backlash was just too much for them. They decided that, oh, do we go with the public or do we go with Nana Aba? I couldn't be bothered where you wanted to go. So they announced on their news that evening, oh, Nana Aba had been suspended. And I saw it, I have been suspended? Wow, really?
So this was before you got to know?
Yeah, oh wow, this is nice. And I just stayed at home. So for 2 weeks, I was home. And I was tired of waiting. So I just wrote to them and said, look, I am not interested. I am leaving. I mean, this is, I think God created an opportunity for me to just, to just go. And what was surprising for me, you know, was that the stations, the radio stations and the TV stations and the newspapers who made a meal out of this were the ones calling me. They didn't treat you right. Come and join us. We will give you a house and a car. We will give you this amount of money. And I was just looking at them and I was looking at TV3 and I said, look, you've been played so much. You have been played, you know. But this is what I learned from it. Twitter is serious. You don't have to just go and sit there and say that this is a joke, and I am sure everyone is going to take it as a joke. What is a joke to you is serious to somebody. And so whatever you put out, and I know that these days there are employers who are checking Twitter feed, what you have tweeted in the past, and they make their decision based on what you have tweeted. So if you're here, learn from my lessons. And I see a lot of people say, oh, TV3 fired you. TV3 didn't fire me. I mean, I want this one to go viral. They cannot fire me. I resigned from TV3 because I felt let down by them, even though I think I was also responsible, not partly, but 80% or 85% responsible for it. But I think there are lessons from it. Have I stopped
troublemaking?
No, it's in my DNA. Have I learnt my lessons? Yes, I have. I've learnt my lessons. I maybe my tweeting hasn't changed, but I advise a lot of young people, and I think that corporate organizations must have social media policies. The lady asked the question about having a second account, or, you know, they should have a social media policy, because the fact that I work with Vodafone, for instance, if I work with Vodafone, and I feel that Tigo is doing something great, and I go and comment Tigo, doesn't mean Vodafone should sanction me. You know, especially when you don't have a policy in place. You know, do you agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
I hear a few
Stephen, you don't agree.
pockets of no in there.
Stephen, you don't agree.
Just,
You know,
for the corporates, they are very interesting.
Yes, no, but the brands are sensitive.
April, when she's done, then we take a question from her. So.
I just want to go back to the sister's question and say the answer is yes. You need to have 2 accounts, right? Unless you work for yourself, and therefore you don't have to worry about getting fired, you need to have a separate account. Now, what that means is that you're going to have less followers on one than the other. So you need to decide whether it's the interaction that you want, the message that you want to get across, or the numbers that you want, right? But until you get to the point where, for example, for me, I get jobs because of what I say. Right? And I work for myself, so I don't have to worry about anybody saying to me, oh, that was too sensitive, you went over the line, you need to be more careful. That's not the image we want to project. On the contrary, it's you are exactly the person we want to talk to, and because you're being as outspoken, we want you to be a brand ambassador. We want you to do that. But until you get to that point, you need to make a clear division, because many companies don't have a corporate social media policy, and in the meantime, you're going to be stuck looking for a job because you are expressing yourself. Is it the right thing? No. But is it the reality of where we are now? Yes. Yeah. And so you have to take it.
And do you need a different name? Like you have a pseudonym, or you're using... it's if you're Nana the cat and Nana Banamwa.
Well, no, obviously you literally can't have 2 accounts with the same name. So if you're going to have, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to have a private account, because then nobody's going to see your tweets. But it has to be a completely private account that cannot be private in the sense that your name is not there, your avatar is not who you are, you know, it's a flower or whatever you make it to be. It has to be completely anonymous, and you have to be smart enough to create a brand new email account to attach to that Twitter account, because people will go looking for it. It's like, oh, okay, well, it says, you know, whatever, it says Day of Sunshine, that's the name of it, but if I look further enough, I'm going to see it's April Rain's account, so now I can figure out that that's her. So you need to go if you're really going to do it because you feel that you have something you need to say, you have to make sure that you're anonymous, and that means taking specific steps to do so.
All right, things are heating up here. So your question, I can walk this way. Yes. Any other questions on me? Oh yeah. I knew Nana will bring up these things.
Okay, good evening. My name is Eli Kem from Doxa Open University, studying broadcast journalism. I want to ask Nanaba, imagine you've built a brand for yourself that high in the sky, and then you suffer such punch. How do you get up and then take up that standard again in terms of your brand? And then I know there is a saying that the only way left when you've hit rock bottom is up. but how do you go up?
Well, I'm going to sound like a motivational speaker now. Okay, so I'm going to use my experience. So I didn't have to do it all over again. Fortunately for me, I didn't have to go looking for a job. I had a lot of people approaching me, and so it was a case of who was offering me more money, and then I would go with them. But then again, I wanted to prove a point that even though a lot of people thought that I was down, I wasn't out. I was still in there. So I just had to do the same thing that I was doing, but this time around, increase maybe the amount of effort I was putting in. So I chose, for instance, I had the option to go for a station that was very popular, very huge in Ghana, and one that was not known at all. You know, so which one do I go with? Do I want to go with a big one which already has known names, big names, or I want to go with a small one and try and let people know that I can make them very big? You know, so I had two options, and then again, both of them came with money. So I went with a small one, and I said to myself that I just want to prove to people that I brought a certain following, a certain number of eyeballs to TV3, and I had the capacity to do the same for this new station. And so within a year, I had done it. I mean, people who hitherto didn't know about the station were now talking about the station and talking about the show. And I had politicians who called me and said, Nana, but I beg you, how much do I have to pay to come on your show? That was when I realized that I had done it. You know, so you just have to, number one, pray. You don't stop praying, because I realized at that point that, you know, for all the years that I toyed with God and I toyed with church, I realized that this is when I needed God the most, you know. Sorry?
Are you still toying with God?
Am I still? It depends on how you look at toying. I mean, when I say toying, it means that I probably would postpone praying before I go to bed. Or when I wake up in the morning, I will forget that I have to pray. Hey. But these days, it is a part of me, because I have seen what the power of prayer can do, you know.
Okay, so Benjamin, the other question that led to all this was about influencers, and he spoke about, you know, what brands look at. But you're an agency, and I know that you look out on behalf of brands. He's spoken about building your values so that brands can identify with them. He also spoke about having an engaged following, so that for those people who think that buying followers is all there is to it, that's not what they look at. And he also asks for circumspection, you know, so that even if you don't have 100,000 followers now, you should know that you will get there one day, and so you should be careful about what you want to say. Is there anything that you can add?
Yeah, so the challenge with being in a creative agency is you have to break the chain of the sameness, you know, and he touched to some extent on that. So what we do is we have influencers in multiple tiers. There's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And somehow the authenticity becomes thinner the higher you go. So you have popular, you know, influencers who you can tell is about the money. But depending on the nature of the campaign that I want to run, I have to look for people more out of their credibility in terms of the specific thing I'm talking about than their following, which used to be the only metric of determining who is cool. And also, we look for differentiation as well. I mean, if everybody is using videos in a particular way, is somebody using it in a different way? You know, and when something is done differently, it's more interesting.
Sure.
So there has to be a difference. So 4 people could have 10,000 followers each and could be doing similar things, but one person does it in a very different way, and that's refreshing. So with like so many tweets coming in every day and so many people on Twitter, it's critical to also stand out in how you come out.
So stand, let me note that, to stand out as well. You have values, have an engaged following, be circumspect in what you do, and then stand out for influencers to notice you. While I bring the microphone to you, to please tell us, you've done a lot of influencing as well. From an influencer point of view, how does, I'll ask a couple of questions at once. So because of who you are, different brands, competing brands, tend to come to you. I'll give a personal example. How do you say to one brand, I won't take you because this other guy has used, or do you get brands saying, because Vodafone has used you before, I don't want to use, or they don't mind? How do you deal with that? And how do you build yourself also as an influencer to give the brand value? Because it's not a one-way relationship. You want the brand, you know, to keep coming to you as well. What do you do?
Okay, so I think firstly, if brands are going to approach you as an influencer, you don't want to give them every single thing. Because in some cases, a brand might approach you to promote a product that you don't know much about, but they think that you have a good following and you can influence people to adopt that product. So it might be a product that you might not internally be a huge fan of, right? So in that sense, you don't want to, and obviously, most people who understand this, who approach influencers, normally will have contracts. So in the contract, you don't want to sell yourself short, whereby, let's say you have to be promoting the brand for a year or for 6 months, because that doesn't allow you to be able to do other things later on. So basically, if you give like everything to the brand, it doesn't allow you to, not that you want to have a competing brand work with you, but it limits you in that sense. But also in our space, you don't have a lot of cases whereby this, competing brands approach you about one thing. That hasn't happened a lot in my scenario. But I think also brands would approach you for different things, right? One person might approach you about a product, one person might approach you about a program, one person might approach you about something in particular. So in an event, right? So far as it's not competing with something else, it allows you to be able to do some of that. So far as the second part of it, I think the key thing is really engagement, right? Because if you are going to even post about the brand and you can't get engagement on it, whoever is trying to work with you, the brand itself will realize that, people are not really paying attention to this. So you want to be able to be creative in even how you post about the brand, how you talk about the brand, so that people can engage with it, because it will build your own following and it will also give more value to the brand as well. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Mike. So my question is, as a brand, what do you do to control? What do you do to control how people receive your viral campaigns, and especially now that on most social media networks or websites, you can actually mute hashtags, right? And for personally, what I've observed for some time now is some campaigns that hit the timeline become annoying over time, because you see a series of hashtags from about 10 people talking about the same product, and it becomes annoying. So what I want to ask is, what as brands are you doing to control something like that? Thank you.
Okay, so the question is, if I understood the question correctly, the question is, if you're on Twitter, for example, and you keep seeing a lot of messages about a particular campaign or about a particular product, how do you control the messaging of your
not the user
as a brand? Yes.
Because right now, what I've realized for me is most of these campaigns, they come on the timeline, and it doesn't get the traction it's supposed to get, because people already know that these guys are just trying to run their campaign with us.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, as a brand,
okay,
moving forward, maybe not now,
okay,
but in the moving forward, where right now on Twitter you can mute hashtags, on other networks you can mute hashtags. What are the brand?
I think, for example, on TV, if you don't like something, you change the channel. If you don't like it, you change the radio station. So I think for that, I don't know if there's anything you as brands can do.
I think, you see, the thing is this. People, I think most of the time, brands lose sight of why people follow them on social media. Okay, the truth is this, people come on social media for several reasons. Very few people come on social media to do research about a product or a brand to buy a product or a service. Very few people. And so as brands, if all you're doing is pushing your product or your service in the face of people, they will get tired. They will definitely get tired. What you want to do as a brand is understand why people are following you, give people a reason to follow you. And then also, you have to find a way to cut through the clutter, because what you don't want to do is also become like a Me Too brand, or what happens in a lot of categories. So you find that in some industries, brands are, tweeting or sharing certain kind of content, and then immediately competition begins to react to that. And it tells you that they clearly do not have a strategy. They're just looking at you and then just copying you. What you want to do as a brand is ensure that every single person who's following you is getting value from the content that you're putting out, and it is not a hard sell, because there's very little commercial intent or commercial intent on social media. People go on social media because they want to have fun. So what you want to do as a brand is be a part of that conversation, and then hopefully when you intermittently introduce information about your product, about your service, you always need to be able to answer the question from the consumer standpoint, and that question simply is this: what is in it for the consumer? Instead of just talking about your product or about your service, what you want to talk about is the value that service provides to the consumer, the value the consumer can get out of the product, the fact that the consumer's life can become easier from getting that product. What you want to sell is the benefit and not the product itself. And so I think in answering that question, I think that is good.
He's fine. He says, so I'll take one from my brand expert friend. I'll just say that. But I'll just say that when the Nanaba issue happened, now this man I'm going to give the microphone to, we are wrapping up. He is a brand expert with one of the big companies in Ghana, but really likes to keep himself. So what he does is, when an issue comes, he goes on social media, he'll take the issue and then offer his brand advice as to how the person should go about it, or if it's already happened, what from his branding expertise you should have done. I remember the piece on Nanaba very well, very, very well. And I think she did exactly that, and she's won, even though I don't think you read his piece. So I'll come to your question. What?
I did.
You did? Yeah. Right.
Thank you very much, Gary. I wanted to respond to the lady who works in the financial services industry. First of all, if you are Ivy, okay, if you want to be active on social media, for example, she asked about creating different social media accounts. The first question you need to ask yourself is that, what is my goal? What do you want to achieve? If, for example, you're somebody who just wants to speak your mind about a whole range of issues, you're just passionate, you just can't shut up. It's important to have a separate identity from who you are. And it's all about image management, because you can decide what image do I want to project of myself on social media. So you can have a pseudo account where you just speak your mind, that's it. And you have one which is you, and then you try and keep as professional as possible, because corporate brands in Ghana are also very sensitive. I remember writing an article and then using one very, 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 very big brand as an example. It was a very innocuous reference to the brand. You'd be surprised at the phone calls that came my way from the director of corporate affairs. Later, the head of communications called me. A whole lot of things. They tried to engage me at different levels, but it was a very innocuous reference to their brand. So having that separate identity is very important.
A very small reference.
Yes. And sometimes, if you run a campaign, you work for a brand and running a campaign, and the campaign is very, very good, it just catches on. When I saw the Vodafone Kikimi commercial, I was like, this is wow. So I put it on my page on Facebook, and somebody Ruth, how much did they pay you for this? You know, I was a bit offended, and I was like, really? The person still came back and said, how much do they pay you? But that was that. But the most important thing is that brands sell. They sell if they have compelling stories, and they don't necessarily have to pay for brand influences. Thank you.
Gary, let me just respond.
Just when we are wrapping up, that's when you guys have decided.
Let me just respond to the thing about the dual account. So, just a quick question: how many of you have ever sent a wrong message to the wrong WhatsApp group?
Oh my God! Oh,
exactly.
Wow.
So, why did I ask that question? There are several people globally who have made mistakes where they wanted to tweet something on their personal Twitter profile, and they ended up sending it on the brand's Twitter handle because they had both accounts on their phone. You just did the same. You know, so what you have to ask yourself is, do you really want the stress that comes from managing two separate personalities where you can easily make a mistake like that? That could be very, very costly. You know, so if you ever send the wrong message to a WhatsApp group, you know what it feels like. You know, you almost have to just hide and not say anything and pray to God that nobody on the WhatsApp group sees it. You know, and that could very easily happen as well with Twitter and with social media.
Okay, my question is Ivan Sofori. When I was in high school, I used to organize events, educational events, entrepreneurial summits, and the rest for the students. So along the way, institutions started contacting me that they want to come on board because of the students I deal with, because they send their proposals to the high schools and the headmistress doesn't give them approval to organize event there, but I do, and they want to come on board. Now, two institutions came on board, and both of them, I'm coming, hold on. Yeah. Along the way, both of them are offering huge amounts. And I'm now building my brand new in the system. But the thing is, now I'm confused as to which one to choose. One of them is very, very influential person within the society. Wait, I'm coming. Then, along the side, one of them is also offering me a scholarship to study in their institution. Amen. So, which one will you choose? Please give me a round of applause. It's a big man. Anyway, this question is a personal question. It's not something we can all draw, from. So when we finish, you just sidle to one of them, especially the brands guys, and then you can do the pros and cons.
But can I respond in just 30 seconds?
Oh, right.
We are not the people you should be asking, okay? And I mean that respectfully, right? But there's no way that we can get the proper context in a 30-second or 30-minute question from you that could potentially change your life, right? So talk to your parents, talk to people in your community, I'm not sure what's funny, but talk to people who actually know what your situation is and know what you want to get out of it, right? So you're asking 5 strangers and we're all experts in our field. I get it, but you need to talk to somebody who knows about you and who knows what your trajectory is and make the decision that way.
Yeah. Thank you. So it's potentially a career, a life-altering decision. You don't want a microwaved answer here, Oh wow, organizer, what do I do? Yeah, I've been told because if I let you ask. Oh, all right. Hold on.
So my name is Alice Mensah, popularly known as Kukwa Mensah. I'm also a digital marketer. And the issue is I've worked with brands where the brand is a mother brand but have sub-brands. Now every sub-brand wants a Twitter account. You get the cash side saying, give me a Twitter account. The business side saying, give me a Twitter account. But we're also saying we want to take just one account so that we can actually put together our followership and know that, okay, we are beating our competitor when it comes to followership. But everybody also wants it. So what's the best advice? Do you want to split your Twitter accounts, or you want to have just one mother account and put all the products on it?
So this goes to straight to Atu Ozinapia, who I can tell you for free on his phone has, how many accounts do you control these days? Probably 10.
16.
16, yeah. Because he does, the bar comes alone, you understand. And then himself, and then, yeah, so he's the right person.
Yeah. So I think thinking about the followership number is the wrong answer.
Yeah.
Right? Because you want to really focus on who would drive what you're doing the most.
Yeah.
Right? So I mean, having one account, you could do that if they are like hashtags that are very synonymous with the sub brands, and then you can, like, they live that way, right? They live with the hashtags. Or I think the better way to do it is to have the actual accounts for the different brands, because someone who might like this type of toothpaste from this company might not like the soap from this company.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes too, over time, people, say that I like this particular soap, I like this particular thing. So if you combine everything together, you might be able, you might lose people. Just going back to the whole values thing of being consistent. If people are following you because you do a certain thing, and then all of a sudden you start doing another thing they don't like, they'll stop paying attention to you. But I think it's also really important to be able to focus on particular groups of people, right? Because you can always, there's no reason why you can't grow the followership of the 5 sub-brands to be a certain number, which will be even bigger than having that followership for which carries the 5 different brands. Right, but if you're consistent with it and you're unique with it, and people follow that, and you're giving them what they want, and they can engage with it and make suggestions, and because you want to help them, because you're looking for what's in it for them, you are also responding to that, then you will be growing.
Okay, so thank you very much. Let me give you 2 quick examples from my personal experience. You see this? It's an inverted pyramid, right? So back at City FM, I was at City FM before I moved to the multimedia group. City was growing, and at the point they had to do a brand audit. One of the things that they told an agency to do for them was social media. But this agency had not caught on to the social media thing at the time, and so they couldn't give them a brand audit of their various shows on social media. So at a point, somebody decided, let's have a Twitter account for City Breakfast Show because it's big, okay? For Jessica's show, for the sports, and so on and so forth. But at a point, someone, I can't remember who, asked us to do this inverted pyramid. What it did was, according to us and the numbers, what shows we thought were the biggest, okay? Then we listed them by the biggest to the smallest. Now, the smallest ones we cut off from their Twitter. And when I came to Joy, they had the same problem. They had a Facebook page for Super Morning Show, one for Newsnight, one for this, one for that. Same brand advice. Take probably at most the top 3. The top 3, maybe the top 2. For some, you don't even need some, you know what I mean? Yeah, you don't need it because sometimes it mixes up the messages. But sometimes the sub-brand can become so strong that it makes absolutely no sense not to go with it. So it depends on you. And again, like the advice she gave to him, you know the organization best. Do a proper introspection and be honest with yourselves. The managers of the sub-brands, everybody is going to say, I need my own Twitter. You have to put your feet down and tell them that you don't need a Twitter and a Facebook presence for each one of the brands. If one of your sub-brands is, what is a big brand a sub-brand in Ghana now? Gillette. PZ.
Yeah, P&G.
P&G. Gillette is huge. If you put P&G there, nobody knows what P&G, Procter & Gamble is. But Gillette is huge. So if it's a sub-brand, you go along with it and you can help yourself. So good luck with that. Yeah. I know there are lots of questions, but we spent a considerable amount of time. When the session is done, you can sidle, speak to, I have to present the news in 1 hour, so I have to drive quickly. a joy. But thank you very much. It's been really an edifying session thank you very much. Round of applause for Atul Zinapia from my left, from my right. And April Rains, Nanaba Anamoa, Stephen Harry Sawyer, and also Benjamin Inyan. I trust that from this session you've gotten the do's and don'ts of the power of Twitter, what you should do, what you shouldn't, and also what you can do to further explore and exploit your presence on that social medium. My name is Gary Al Smith. I work with the Multimedia Group, but sometimes you will see me on DSTV and Kwesi Sports. I know they are competing brands, but just like Nanaba, because I like to think I'm good at what I do, I can have a main chick and a side chick. Yes. I can be on Joy FM and City FM, nobody will talk. So, who? You tell my girlfriend. When I say main chick, DSTV used to be my primary employer, but it got to a point where I felt they weren't giving me a good deal. So I changed who my main chick was, and DSTV is now my side chick. Yeah, it's good. And it's a great place to be, believe me. It's a great place to be, so try and work hard and get there. Organizers, if there's nothing else, thank you again for joining the Power of Twitter session. We continue tomorrow. We'll close now. Oh, we are closed. All right, bye.
So tomorrow's session will be the Twitter Masterclass at 12 p.m.
Vodafone, power to you.